Hello, everyone. Yes, it's live. Finally, we are live. That's great to be here. We have more than 600 attendees today. So that's great. I can see that ephemeral environment is very hot topic, I would say. So happy to be here. I'm Romaric, co-founder and CEO of Qovery. And today I'm going to talk about how to create ephemeral environments in your CI/CD pipeline with Kubernetes, Qovery, and all of that. We'll dig into that subject. So if you're not familiar with ephemeral environment, we'll cover a short and quick introduction. And the goal is to spend some time on doing this live demo, just getting into all of that, putting our hand dirty, and that's great. So yeah, just before we get started, we'll wait probably 2 minutes. I know that some people are quite usually late. If you have any questions, just feel free to post your questions in comment. I will try to respond as much as possible. I know that there is a lot of people, so if I skip the question, no worries, we'll just respond. I will respond after the live. I try to be very conscious and conscious of the time because it's just 1 hour and we have a lot to cover. Okay. So that's great. So let's wait for 30 seconds more. And then we can start. And feel free to say hi. Because, oh yeah, just one other thing is that I have a slightly small delay. So if you ask a question, it takes approximately 30 seconds to 1 minute just to be shown to myself. So yes, expect to have a delayed response from me. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's go. Let's get started. So let me share this and this way. How does that work? Yeah, that's much better. Hey, everyone. That's great. Bonjour à tous. Yes, the talk is in English and not in French, but if you say hi in French, I will respond in French. So yeah, who I am. Just quickly about myself. Most of you know about me, but not all of you. So I'm Romaric, CEO and co-founder of Qovery. I'm a developer, DevOps, SI, whatever you can name it. I'm quite technical and still involved into some technical stuff, obviously, Qovery, but also some open source projects. So I'm super happy just to make this and share my knowledge and do this quick presentation. Okay, so just quickly about Qovery. The goal is not to spend too much time on that, but basically, Qovery is an IDP, so internal developer platform. We really focus on the developer experience, how you can just make sure that any developers can deploy their application in a very easy way, get the experience that they do expect to be a bit more autonomous. It runs on top of Kubernetes and your cloud. Okay, so we really focus on that. If you are interested, just take a look at the website and you will get all the information that you need, okay? And since Qovery is an IDP and have multiple pieces, we are going to focus on the part that is managing the multiple environment. We have created quite dynamic systems that manage environments in a very proper way. And that's the part that we are going to use in Qovery to manage the ephemeral environments that we need, okay? Right. So the agenda of the day. So a quick introductions about ephemeral environment, what it looks like, why it's necessary using it. Just like also sharing some concept and some different use case that you can get with ephemeral environment. It's a broad concept. Okay, so that's what we'll cover in 10 minutes. So then we'll just review quickly. The goal is really to spend time on the live demo. I know that most of you want practical things, so seeing for real stuff. So we'll spend some time there, but we need just to cover also what I did just before, what I did set up and how the things work. Okay, so we'll get the macro view and then we'll get into the details. And obviously, after the live demo, the conclusions and the Q&A session. So obviously, as I said at the beginning, just if you have any questions, drop your questions in the chat. I have a small delay, and I will try just to respond as fast as possible to them. Okay, so don't feel free to interrupt me. Don't be sorry about that. All right. So just quickly, what's an ephemeral environment? And that's basically, and I'm pretty sure all of you are quite familiar with that concept. It's something that we hear about for a very, very long time. It's not broadly new, but it's something that starts to be really emerging today. It's basically the ability to create like a new dynamic environment based on the, so usually we associate a lot ephemeral environments with preview environment. That is like for every single pull request branch that you create, then you can get a new environment that is really dedicated to run your test on it. Okay, so that's one of the main use cases. And usually people, when they talk about ephemeral environments, they think about preview environments for those pull requests. Okay, that's exactly what we are going to cover. But just there's also other concepts or other use cases. Okay, just before getting to the next slide, there's like great articles written by one of my colleagues from Morgan, explaining the concept of ephemeral environments, like with some detailed use cases. So if you want just to take a look at that, you type ephemeral environments, Qovery explained, and you will get the information. Okay, so this article. Right. The different use cases, as I mentioned, okay, we'll focus on one, which is the first, so a testing environment for every pull request. Okay, so that's the goal of that one. That's the most interesting one in some way. But just keep in mind that ephemeral environments themselves are used also for demoing environments, benchmarking, end-to-end testing, any name it environment. You can literally do anything. We have even customers that they're using Qovery to create demo environment for their salespeople. Okay, so then from that, they have an isolated environment where they can run their test. When it's the weekend, then the environment just shut down. You see, so you can literally do whatever you want. It's basically the idea is that you get an environment for a certain amount of time, and then when it's no longer needed, you can just drop that environment. Okay. And the challenge is, so I know, and I discuss with a lot of you, actually, I contacted almost every single like person, but now they're like more than 600. So it's quite complicated, but I try to get the information of what you were interested the most of that talk. And it's definitely something that some of you have already explored. And the challenges and pitfalls of integrating and implementing informal environments are like managing properly environment and variables and secrets, database seedings. That's something that is very common. And that's why we've built Replibyte, that is an open source, completely open source project written in Rust that helps you to seed any type of databases. So in a very short time. The dynamic URLs, how do you manage like the fact that you need to get a dedicated URL for every single service that you have, okay? And obviously the speed of provisioning, which is a bit burden. It's a big deal, especially when you start to manage complex environment with 50, 100 microservices that are working all together. How do you make sure that those environments are spinning up at the right pace? That's really a big deal. Obviously, we can't cover all those things, but I will share some tips to you during the talk, just to make sure that you can get as much as you can, depending on your use case. But if you need to have like a special session, dedicated session, just feel free to reach out and we can do something. Okay. So, and obviously in all of that is the ease of using integrations, because you all have almost existing technical environments. So here it's Kubernetes, GitHub Actions. How do you make sure that you can integrate into that environment? You may be using Backstage, you're using maybe cost control management tool like a kubectl or anything. How do you make sure that, yes, those ephemeral environments are also like integrated with all those tools, right? So just quickly, let's review the setup that we are going to work on all together. And I count on you just to help me just to make it work. I didn't test it yet. No, I'm joking, obviously. It's something that I know pretty well. But so basically, we'll do two things together, okay? So you're all familiar with GitHub. So obviously, in this example, GitHub is just the one that I picked because most of people are just familiar with that. GitHub Actions is something that is very popular today, but I know that some of you are using Jenkins, GitLab CI, Harness. You can pick the ones that you want as a CI/CD pipeline. It just works. Okay, so everything that I'm showing here is quite generic. Okay, and it will work on any technical stack, any CI/CD that you have already in place. So the goal here is that if we open a pull request, what we want, okay, so we have already set up what we call a blueprint environment, okay, on Qovery. I will show you just that after. But the idea is that when we open a pull request, what we want is triggering, so a workflow, a GitHub Actions workflow. Okay, this one will build the applications, run the unit test of my application. So that repository, okay, it's not a mono repository, but it's a single repository. And inside my environment, I have multiple single repositories. But it works as well with mono repositories. The goal is that when everything is green, okay, unit test, so build unit test, then we'll create what we call an ephemeral environment. So this is where we'll do a call to Qovery, okay, from the GitHub Actions workflow pipeline that we have. And we'll ask Qovery to create an isolated environment, so on Kubernetes, okay? So I will show just deeply how it works under the hood, but basically Qovery will handle all the creation of the ephemeral environment dynamically for that pull request. We'll get something that I didn't mention in that is that we'll get all the information from this environment with the different services inside the pull request itself. We'll get the URLs of different services with their dedicated URLs and so on and so forth. Okay. Something also that I want us to cover because sometimes what I'm used to see is that, yes, obviously creating an ephemeral environment with just Kubernetes is quite simple. Because if your environment is just Dockerized applications, that they are like self-contained, you are maybe a Postgres database, like in this example that is running on Kubernetes, it's quite simple. But how does it work when you have external services like a Lambda, like any other services? It just works. With Qovery, we have the concept of what we call lifecycle job. You can really provision and execute any kind of script. It could be what we are showing here, the Terraform manifest. It could be a Tofu one now, Helm chart. It could be a Docker container. It could be a shell script, anything. You can just execute that at a certain point of time inside your environment. And then you can spin up the resources that you need, okay, and get the information back from this external resource. Because in the case, for instance, on an AWS Lambda that you will spin up, you need to have maybe the host that is targeting this Lambda. So you can get back this information and share the information to the other services. Okay, it's all built in, right? So once it's done, the environment is ready. We can just try and play with that environment. So what happened just after that? Okay, so you run your test, you have made your changes, you did like multiple commits inside your pull request, and now you need just to close or maybe merge back this pull request. What happened? So this is where, again, you have another flow, which is, okay, the user close or merge the pull request. Then GitHub Actions will trigger a CI workflow, okay? Again, it could be GitLab CI, Harness, Jenkins. It's exactly the same. And then an action will be executed, which is the delete ephemeral environment actions that will be triggered by Qovery and managed by Qovery just to release as much all the resources. Okay, so you have the guarantee that all the resources will be just released. Okay, so no dangling resources, no wasted resources, wasted money. Everything is just released. And then you have a clean setup and clean environment. Okay, so the Postgres backend, front-end lifecycle job with the Lambda will be all deleted. Okay, and we get the information from the pull request. That's basically the concept of the ephemeral environment. The ephemeral environment is not a long-living environment. It's just here the time that it's needed to run our test. Oh, there is some other aspect that I want to cover, okay, about how you make sure that for a long-living pull request, how do you make sure that the environment is not running forever? There's some concept like the TTL, time to live concept, or the start and stop concept. I will just quickly show you that, okay? But yeah, let's say it. Yes, one question. Great. It is similar like Argo CD. In some way, yes. But with a much more, again, as I explained, so Qovery is really focusing, it's an IDP. So if you're using just this part, then that's something that you can build with Argo CD, but we really do focus on the developer experience. I will show you the interface, but basically all of that, even creating a new environment, if you want to clone it from Qovery, you can do it. In just one click, you can clone an existing environment, okay? It's really focusing, we're focusing on platform engineering teams, developers, great developer experience, so yes. But obviously you can build, conceptually speaking, everything that I'm showing here, okay? It's not even related to Qovery. You can do that with Argo CD, okay? But I want to share also some pitfalls that you have to avoid, the things that you need to think about to really create a proper ephemeral environment system, right? Thanks for asking. So let's go back. Let's take a deeper look just to the Kubernetes part. I think that's a very important one, okay? So basically, you have two pieces here. Qovery is in charge of deploying the full stack, the environment, and configuring, dynamically speaking, all the different services. Okay, when we're talking about an ephemeral environment, as I mentioned, it means like creating, so sharing the secrets with the right applications, passing the different URLs to the different applications, managing like all the different dynamic variables, basically, okay? And obviously spinning up, provisioning the different services. So what happened under the hood is that in the case of Qovery, what we have is that we have a Qovery namespace that is running on the cluster that is just two binaries. Actually, there's like other binaries, but they are like Rust binaries by the way that they are completely open source, that they are running, and that they are connecting to the control plane that is completely external to the stack and pulling tasks in a secure way from the control plane to execute those tasks. Those tasks are creating an environment, deploying this application with that configuration. So the control plane is the brain of the whole system that is managing the business logic under the hood. Okay, basically. So what happens on Kubernetes is that so you can install Qovery on your Kubernetes cluster, okay? And the idea is that the engine will be in charge of communicating with the Kubernetes API and doing all the scheduling, okay? So if you're using Nginx ingress controller, prompted, DNS manager, Loki, all those things, you can just basically connect the Qovery engine to all those elements and start like deploying new environments. So for instance here, so what you don't see and what you will not see from the interface is that the isolated namespace here is composed of multiple services, so multiple the Postgres, backend, frontend, so which is actually deployment, so it's the pod resource that is created for the backend, the frontend. AWS SQS is a job, okay, that is executed once at a certain point of time, and you have a stateful state that is connected to an AWS EBS. Okay, and you have external resources outside of the Kubernetes cluster as well that they are like provisioned by code. Okay, so if you are interested by this part, by the way, the Qovery engine is open source. You can just dig a bit deeper. It's written in Rust. Okay, you can have and you can see what happens under the hood. Okay, we have a lot of documentation on that part. Right, that's great. All right, that's demo time. Any questions so far? Oh, yes, there's. I can see that people are quite happy to see other folks in this live session. That's nice. All right. So let's jump into a proper demo, right? So I'm inside the Qovery web interface. Okay, as I described here. Okay, let's go back here. Okay. What happened is that I've declared my blueprint environment. So to create an ephemeral environment, we need to have a base image of our environment. What looks like our environment? The environment is composed here of a Postgres backend and different services. Here, I have a project. I have a base environment that I call the blueprint, and I have a back office UI. I have a Postgres database, and I have a container that is a to-do application. Okay. This application runs well. That's great. I can get access to the live logs of that applications. I can see that everything works properly in that environment. So I can retry and validate that this base environment works, okay, in its simplest test. If I want to see that, yes, this environment is accessible, I can just basically, yes, I can click here. And I can see that my environment is running. Okay, so I get access to the web service. If I need to say, hey, hello, LinkedIn event, yes, it just works. Okay, so it's connected to my database. Everything works properly. That's great. Right. So what happens that's the only thing actually that you need to do on Qovery. So obviously installing Qovery on your Kubernetes cluster, connecting your Kubernetes cluster to Qovery. Okay, then it's referenced and you get access from that interface. Then you need to create the project, the environment, so your base environment with the different services. Everything that I'm doing from this interface, by the way, you can do it from Terraform, CLI. We have a Terraform provider or CLI or public API. Okay, so you can do it in a GitOps way, not by doing ClickOps, right? So if you need to connect then your container registry, you can connect just simply your container registry. Okay, we do support any kind of container registry that you can just connect. So here I have multiple of them. I'm going to use ECR, right? So I will build, as I mentioned, my to-do application. So my application on my GitHub workflows. So I will build the container and I will push that one into my ECR container registry. So I connect this to Qovery and it can reuse the new and use the new image of that application. And I will generate as well, obviously, an API token that I will use inside GitHub. Okay, so super simple. I've already done all of that, obviously, right? So let me go back to my EEDO project and blueprint one. Okay, so what happens on my GitHub Actions pipeline, right? So if you're familiar, I assume that most of you are familiar with GitHub, obviously, and maybe GitHub Actions. But basically what I did is that I simply created different workflow, okay? So the first workflow that I've defined inside a progress, and I will show you just the end result, obviously, afterwards, is that inside this flow, you see, I've declared a job that is to create end-to-end environments, basically, okay? I've injected my environment variables Qovery CLI access because inside this workflow, what I'm doing just basically is that I'm executing some commands that they are like web commands from the Qovery CLI. Those commands are going to be like this. So cloning the environments, that's the actions that I'm doing. So cloning the base environments that I'm using. Okay, so here I've defined the blueprint environment name that is declared. By the way, all the variables are declared. So let me just go here inside my repository settings. So if I click on, no, it's not here, it's here. I don't remember where. Yes, let me just go back here. Action, yes. Here I've declared those ones. Okay, so blueprint environment name, blueprint, the application name from this repository on Qovery. Okay, so to do app. Okay, that's the label that I'm using. The organization name, we have a concept of organization in Qovery, so that's Qovery Win. And the name of the project name. Okay, super simple. As a secret, I've declared so to push my image from my pipeline into my ECR registry, obviously AWS access key ID, AWS secret access key, and my Qovery CLI access token just to execute my commands. Okay, so perfect. If I go back here, so what we are doing is cloning the environment from Qovery. Okay, so basically what is doing this workflow is doing that, cloning the environment, updating the container. So with the new image that we have built inside our pipeline, great. We do the Qovery environment deploy. So we deploy the whole environment with all the applications, okay? They are all connected to each other, right? And then we display the markdown. So we display all the information inside the pull request. That's basically what we're doing. So if I do that manually, it looks like this, basically. Okay, let's say I create a new pull request. It will be exactly that will be done, programmatically speaking, from my CI pipeline. So it's inside the environment. I clone this one. Let's say that the pull request name is fit or core LinkedIn demo. That will be the name of my environment. We can choose a different cluster if you have multiple clusters to run your test. And then we clone just the environment. That's as simple. Okay. Again, it's the flow that we have inside Qovery. It's like very simple, okay, but it's applicable to any kind of flow. Okay. Here, what we have inside this environment, it's all the application, but they are with the same metadata, the same version. So what we are doing from our pipeline, here we are doing Qovery container update. Okay, so meaning that here we get to this application, the to-do app settings, and we change the tag here programmatically with the new version, the one from our pull request. Okay, but the other, so we save that. But the other applications from the same environment, let's say we have 50 other applications, they are sticking to the same version from the other environment. Obviously, you can also bump those versions and programmatically do whatever you need, okay? But here, the idea is that you can really tailor the flow the way that you want, okay? All the environment variables and secrets are like sticking to the same. They are all connected to each other. We have a quite complex system. So as I told you, the complex part is really to manage properly environment variables and secrets across the different environments. When you clone one, you want to make sure that those elements are properly spread across the different services. And that's something that here you get out of the box, right? So if I go back here, then we have updated the application. And then what we do is basically we do Qovery environment deploy. So what does that mean? It means this. We do that, and we deploy the environment. So what does that mean? It means that we create all the resources, as I explained, on the Kubernetes cluster, the database, the different services, and we interconnect to each other. And we create the network, the TLS certificates with the ingress controller configurations and all of that, and we target properly like the different application. You see, you can get access to the logs and everything. That's the way it works. So all of that, that's exactly what we are going to do now, okay, by using just GitHub Action. So what it looks like this. So let's say I want to change maybe, okay, let's do something. I'm going to change just the background of this application. So I have this application that is running to the app. Let's say I want to change the background from this application, which is a kind of blue-green background. Okay. So I go back here, and I'm going to do change this one. Okay. So I'm going to do this. What could be 40, 40, 40? Let's go for 40, 40, 40. I don't know what's the exact code of that, the color, but let's do a 40, 40, 40. Okay, I'm changing the background. So hello, update to change the background. So what I'm doing, it's just the pure classic flow. Okay, obviously I'm doing that from the web IDE. It's just basic. I'm changing my configuration, so my HTML file, and I create a new branch. Okay, so from that, so core change background LinkedIn demo. That's the name of the branch that I want to use. Okay, great, perfect. So the branch has been created. Now I will create a pull request. Hey, this is a new PR to change the background color. All right. Create the pull request. And what will happen is that, boom. So we have our flow that is executed. Okay. So we run the unit test, the build port. Okay. Those are like the two things that are like getting in. Okay. Now we are in the building phase and we are going to push the container as I explained. So you can see here, we are at this phase. You see, I also, inside my pipeline, integrated just a quick message saying that if you add the end-to-end label to the pull request, then you can trigger the creation of the ephemeral environment. That's really the beauty here, because what you don't want is spinning up a new environment every single time that you're doing a pull request. Let's say you bump just a file, a dump file, the README file. You don't want for that getting up a new environment. It costs money, right? So you just want to trigger manually the environment when you really need it. So for that, that's why I added into my flow, so into my GitHub action workflow. So if I go back here, I've actually created that. So my pull request will be executed only if I put a label, specific label that is the end-to-end. Okay, so this flow will be executed only in that situation, right? Right. Okay. So if I go back to my pull request, I will wait just one moment to add this end-to-end test, and we'll see what happened. Okay, just one moment. I'm looking at the question. Can I set Qovery on my on-premise infra? That's a very good question. Yes, that's something that we are working on. You can install, the idea is that you can install Qovery on any Kubernetes setup, right? So if it's on your on-premise infra, on your Raspberry, on your computer, you can use it. Yeah. I have another question. Oh, yes. Okay. That's the response one. Perfect. Okay. So we have our service and the pipeline that is green. So now what I'm going to do, and let me show you from here that we have no other actually environment. Okay. We have our core LinkedIn demo environment, blueprint, Evox music patch. So it was a older test from me. What I'm gonna do now is just triggering that. So I add a label, end-to-end test, perfect. And what will happen is that we have a new, you see, boom. We create this end-to-end environment now. And if we look at the detail of that one, yes, we see that the environment has been created and now is in deployment state. Okay, so if I go back to Qovery, we can see that here by refreshing, we have our environment. So the core, change, background, LinkedIn demo. You see, that's great. And this one, as I explained, so we keep the order of execution, obviously. So we have the pipeline that has been defined, database first that they are started, then the applications. Okay, if we look here, we have the to-do app, and the to-do app is another version from the other environment. So this is the new version of our environment. So if I open the settings, this version represents the SHA from my new image inside my environment. Okay, so we are in building states for the other environments, deployment state for the database. We do configure everything as I explained, and then we'll get our environment to test that. Maybe I would just shut down like one or two environments. So this one, for instance, to release some resources, and I would just cancel that one. Yes. Well, I can even actually stop this one. There's no problem. So you see, boom, cancel. I can stop this one. So you see, I can really easily manage multiple environments. It's quite straightforward here. I have multiple 4 environments. I can stop, shut down, and blah, 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 those environments. Something just in the meantime that I want to show, I got this question a lot from users, is how do you make sure that you control cost from those environments? Obviously, you're spinning up resources. It's one of the most complex things. Okay, how do you make sure that you are wisely using those resources? There's some things. First, we integrate into Qovery some primitives that makes you able just to shut down automatically those environments and prevent like misusage. All right. I'm not going to talk about the permissions and what you can do. Obviously, I will focus on that. But one other thing is that we do partner with Kubecast, and Kubecast is an open source solution that you can properly install on Qovery and get access to all the details and informations about your environments, your different spend. So which is quite interesting. It's not only for AWS and Kubernetes. Actually, you can also measure like the cost of different external resources, and you can know exactly what are like the potential savings that you can operate just to make sure that you are not wasting money. Okay, so in the case of the ephemeral environment, obviously you will create tons of environments depending how many pull requests you have. So you want to have like a clear control of how much in maximum you want to spend. So that's something that you can set properly with Qovery, obviously, because since you can configure the size and it's running on your Kubernetes cluster, you have everything that you need just to make sure that you are not overspending and creating new nodes for that. But for the also external resources, you can set like some permissions for that. But in the case where you need to really know if you are properly using the resources, you can dig into the different environments that you have. Okay, so and you can see exactly the spend of every single applications and if you are not overspending. Because if you set too much CPU, too much RAM, then you can just waste money because those resources are not consumed, but they are allocated. Okay, so you can do all of that. In terms of just, as I mentioned, so if you need to properly shut down every single day, your environments are set TTL, we have what we call deployment rules. Okay, so those things you can set up. That's something also in your case, if you are running and building your own ephemeral environment system, you are really need to consider that. Otherwise, you will have wasted resources. You know, those long living pull requests that you have for weeks because it's a long work. You will end up in that situations in just basically letting those environments running forever. Okay, so you want to make sure that those environments where they are not used, they are just shut down. Not tear down completely, not clean up, but at least tear down. So here, for instance, if you want to say, hey, I want to just shut down my environments like during the weekend and at night because I'm not working. No one is working at night in the team. So Qovery can take care of shutting down those environments automatically and spinning up them again early on when you need it the next day. Right. So, okay, let's go back here. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's great. I have resources, allocated resources, so now it works. My applications are running. By the way, the deployment per stage are in parallel and you can optimize that. Okay, so that's great. Here we see that, hey, my application has been deployed. You see it's green, all green everywhere. So that's great. My database also. And if we go to our application here, you see, boom. Is it the right one? Actually, I'm not even sure. Yes, it should be. Let's go back to the here. And I have like some cache issue, actually. Let's go back here and here. End-to-end test. That's great. Oh, so you see, we have our environment that's been deployed. It's great. And now we are running some end-to-end test. It's another part. But basically, what we see is that we have access to the different URL. So we can show the logs of every single application from this environment, which is great. So that's great. And we can even get access to the preview URLs for those environments. Okay, so here, if I show those one, okay, maybe I mix something like on the change log 444. Okay, so maybe that's something that I just need to troubleshoot. But anyway, yes. So you see this environment has been created so you can try out the feature that you were working on. So that's great. And once it's done, obviously, okay, you can make your different changes. They will be in practice. So if I change something here, then a new version will be triggered from that. Okay, so it works properly on that. And when it's done, you can just close or merge the pull request and the environment will just disappear. Okay, so I can do it actually with another environment. I have another environment that is running here. So it's this one. So I have two environments that are linked to Qovery. I have my Evox Music patch 27 and this one. So if this one, for instance, is no longer used, and here I decide just to close or merge that one, so I will close this one. What will happen is that the environment just basically will be teared down on Qovery. You see, boom. Whoa, yes, that's great. So it's in deletion state. So Qovery will make sure to delete all the different resources. As I explained, so the ingress configurations, the different external services that you have, the EBS if you have with your database, the different container, obviously, and blah, blah, blah. You see, so everything will be automatically released. That's great. All right. One other element that I wanted to show is, let's say in the example, so I have a much more complex example. You need to deploy, you need to seed your database. That's a very common question. Okay, so this environment is quite much more important. It's 15 services that are running all together with a good pipeline. So it's composed of multiple services. And you see, we have this service that is executed that is basically a seed script. Okay. This seed script is executed when the databases are ready. So we can seed the database from that one once it's ready. It's one of the most important things because when you want to run your tests, you want to have probably already some data that represent what you have in production. So you can put any kind of a script and execute them. And a seed script is a good one, for instance. One other thing is the complexity, as I mentioned, of spinning up external resources, what it looks like. That's something that we are seeing very common from people that want ephemeral environments. You're using BigQuery, you're using RDS, and you want to get ephemeral environments with RDS or even EC2, VMs, stuff like that. You can basically, so we have this concept of lifecycle job that you can use that will makes you able just to basically execute any kind of script. So it could be even Terraform script, okay, or Tofu script if you want, if you prefer that one, right? It works with any kinds of resources, basically. All right. So I see. Good. I hope you enjoyed the demo. I just want to quickly summarize, and I want to let some time for the demo, the questions. I know that some of you have some questions, so it's much better this way. But yeah, to summarize, ephemeral environments, okay, regardless Qovery and this stack, okay, you can really, so I hope you get exactly the idea of an ephemeral environment. You have different use cases, as I mentioned. The most prominent one is obviously getting a new environment for every single pull request that you do create. Okay, but you can get that also for demo purpose, benchmarking, so those kind of things. An ephemeral environment, so it means that must be shut down at some point. Okay, so that's really the concept. Otherwise, you're just better getting like multiple stagings that are running forever. Okay, the goal here is really to make sure that you have all the guardrails that you need to shut down those environments. Why? Because otherwise we just throw money out of the window where they're not used. Okay, and then it's no longer an ephemeral environment. So for that, you can consider using what we call TTL, so time to live, like a value, just to shut down automatically when they are no longer used after some time. You can use features like start and stop, the ones that we have inside Qovery, where you can schedule automatically, like when you want to shut down, tear down, or delete the environment. Okay. In terms of Kubernetes, something also that I wanted to share with you guys is the namespace itself. So you see, if I go back here, actually, so every single environment that we create is, so for the Docker, the containerized application, they are running inside an isolated namespace. Okay, so dynamically Qovery, what does Qovery is creating a namespace, like an isolated one. Okay. If you need more resource isolation, it can happen. Consider using vCluster, for instance. That's a good one. Also to create those namespaces and getting a namespace dedicated to kind of, it's a namespace, but with like a semi-physical, it's kind of logical namespace, but you still have like some isolations against like the Kube API. So that's a good one that you can use. Or you can use also a dedicated cluster with dedicated VPC network and all of that if you really need hard isolation. Okay, that's something also work. But I need just to explain that. With Qovery, you have the ability to choose different clusters for your environment. It's a good one, especially if you really need hard isolations. Really depends on the industry. Okay, to measure your cost, kubectl, OpenCost are like very good one. You can use them like on Kubernetes. It works out of the box. You can even plug them with other external services. So that's great from one interface. You can at least manage and get a better view of how much you spend on each environment. That's what I just showed before. And the pitfalls are just everywhere, you see. So when you start deploying multiple services, you can have like a long, very long time of spinning up those environments. The developer experience itself, I didn't talk too much about that, but that's a very important one. Actually, if you want to get your ephemeral environments used by your end user, developers, product manager, you really need to make them like easy, like to use, like integrated properly into your flow. And for that, getting a flow directly integrated into your pull request system is really great for that. If you start asking, and I do think we can do like a dedicated session on that. But if you start asking and prompting information just to spin up the environment and you can't get those information right from the code, it starts to be a bit messy and complex for them just to get where they need to. So they can at any time just like stop using what you have built. Okay, so developer experience is really a hot topic. We can talk about that for very long time, but yeah. All right. That's it for me. We have 15 minutes almost to respond to all the questions. It was fast, but is there any specific point that you want me to go back? And just quickly before responding to your question, feel free to give it a shot. So for free, no credit card, no cloud account, no Kubernetes needed. You can give a shot to our ephemeral environment system with .ul. So try ephemeral environments EE-now. You can get access to a free account just to play with that. Feel free to give it a shot. Right. So that's a very good question. So my first question, because thanks for watching and thanks for asking. So how is it different from OpenShift, and what is the benefits of OpenShift? That's a very good question. Qovery, if you look at the experience, we do really focus on the developer experience. Conceptually speaking, it's quite similar to what you can get from OpenShift. Okay, you can integrate and get this platform on top of the different elements. But from Qovery, what you get is really the developer experience. Developer experience is by the web interface, but by also all the different integrations that you can do and how programmatically you can just use the solution. Okay, you can really build on top of it. It's an IDP. Okay, we come with something that will work out of the box, but the idea is that if you need to and if you want to build on top of it, we have a CLI that you can get access. So it's a completely open source, the Qovery CLI. You can find all the information on our GitHub. But if you need to build our CLI and start to change the CLI, if you need to consume our API, it's completely open. If you need to change and adapt the way that the engine works to your use case, everything like that, you can really build on top. You get out of the box something that is really delightful, but you can build on top of it and adapt it to your usage. Yes. So I hope I respond to your question. Any other question? I'm just like browsing. I saw a lot of messages, so I try just to find the message that they are like the questions. All right. So I think we're good. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here. If you have any other question after this talk or because you watched the record, just feel free to reach out. You have my email address. And if you want to give it a shot for free, so there is a free access, you don't need anything, just a browser. You can exactly do what I've done from here. You see, I've just shared, again, my web interface. You can do everything from your browser for free with this URL. Okay, Qovery.com, try EE. now, and I will be super happy to get your feedback. So I wish you a good day, very good day, and speak later then. Bye.